I recently made a video talking about a shocking immigration fraud scandal that happened in a local Tim Hortons here in Ontario. And it was involving the Tim Hortons manager was texting one of their employees, who's a 17-year-old girl, and saying, "Hey, I'll give you between 15 and $20,000 if you date this Indian guy," because the idea is that he could become a Canadian citizenship, even if it's a fake marriage. So, you sign some papers, then I'll give you $20,000, and then everybody wins. That's the idea. But this is obviously a terrible crime. And in this text exchange, and there's proof of this, the manager's saying, "Don't worry about it. This happens all the time. We do it all the time. No big deal." And then I talked about it. So I'm going to put a link to that video if you haven't seen it. But this one is a follow up to that makes the whole thing even worse, and I really need to talk about it. So I will put a link to this video just to see this whole marriage scam. So this Tim Hortons, the manager here, again, is offering tens of thousands of dollars to girls. They do it all the time to fake marry an Indian or someone in that region so that they can get a passport and get all the benefits. Just absolutely disgusting. But watch the follow up. This is not going to be boring, I promise. Watch this. So this is the Picton Gazette, and they wrote this after this because this went viral. This video, and it says Hate Street Rebel News, and they're the ones who reported it, has failed repeatedly to meet the standard of a qualified Canadian journalism. Like, okay, that's what they say. And then they go on to say, you really have to follow this. Watch this. About a century ago, the same magazine talked about fiery cross blazings, and they're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, and sort of drawing a comparison. 100 years later, can you believe it? This reporter, who's white, and the police are white, are almost acting like the KKK, and the whole thing is about they don't like brown people. That's really their point here. And the weird thing is, like in this article, they brag about we're this accredited journalism, we cover both sides of the story and we're fair. We don't like Rebel. Okay, you don't have to like Rebel. I don't care about that. But what shocked me, or it actually didn't shock me, but is really worth noting, is they didn't really acknowledge in this whole article, I read it 3 times, the problem with the immigration fraud itself. They just nitpicked a bunch of things. They didn't like the way the police behaved. They did because he's white, or they didn't like his white behavior, how he was treating, the workers there. Okay, that's their opinion, but that seems like a side issue, don't you think? And then, so, here it says in one report on this issue, a Tim Hortons manager was fired after a 17-year-old employee complained, and that's the thing. So they just mention it, but they don't make a big deal about it. Like, yeah, immigration fraud's happening. This is a horrible crime, but whatever. I'll just mention that. And then I'll say, well, the people saying it didn't have journalists, they don't have their journalism documentation or whatever, accreditation. Okay. But they're not really disputing that. They're saying, yeah, I guess the fraud happens all the time, but big deal. And then they point out the comments. Now, of course, comments in these type of things, if you read them, if they go viral, they can be nasty. But these are just like anonymous commenters. You might not have to like it, but is that some big story? I mean, that's what they're talking about here. Like try that in a small town and grab our pitchforks and get out of town. Try to deal with this stuff the old fashioned way. These are just comments under the video. Find out where they live and make this very comfortable or very uncomfortable, legally, of course. Stay country strong, boys, and blah, blah, blah. And they're saying this is so bad. I can't believe it. The only reason they're bringing this up is because they are immigrants and they want to just spread hate about immigrants. Okay, that is your opinion. Now, but the whole reason Rebel News exists really is they tell the other side of the story that mainstream, including, the Picton Gazette yourself, is a small mainstream uh, news outlet, but they're not reporting on stuff like this. This is a big story if there is Canadian immigration fraud at really any level. and it really needs to be called out. Nobody should feel comfortable doing this, right? This is a horrible, horrible crime that affects everybody because we just waste so much money. It just screws everything up. Think about the type of people we'd get here if they think they can get away with this type of crime. Okay. So, like, they get benefits from it, huge. And then they can invite their family, and other people will be, they'll want to do it too. Oh, whoever down the street just all they did was give 20,000, now they get to stay, and we have to go back to India or whatever, so why don't we do the same? Maybe we'll give 50,000, whatever. It's definitely worth it. So that's really the issue here. And then they say, rebels so racist, whatever. But I'd ask them a question, to the Picton Gazette. This is a Rebel News reporter, Drea Humphrey. She's obviously black. So why would they hire her? Just to get a token black person? Okay. But why would she accept the job? I'm sure she's not getting paid that much. Is she just stupid? Are you trying to say she's stupid? Why would she work for a KKK type of organization? You'd have to wonder that. That's, I think that would be worth mentioning. It would be worth saying, even if you just want to point out that they're not happy with how Rebel News covered the story, you can point that out. Like, they're so upset they called it Sing Hortons instead of Tim Hortons. They thought that was racist or rude. I mean, they're allowed to have that opinion. I don't make that type of comment myself. Or they said you can now get a serving of immigration fraud alongside your double double. Again, I don't know. That was supposed to be a joke. I don't see that as a big deal. But the whole article goes on to talk about this, fake news, hate news, blah, blah, blah. But they just won't acknowledge the crime itself. And by not acknowledging this type of crime, what do you get? Like, what is the end result? You get more crime, and then you get more people divided because you're just not doing your job of addressing this. You're just leaving people feeling sick. Like, really? Not only did you not mention the crime in the first place, now that it's here, you're just like nitpicking about comments in the Facebook feed, and you still don't care, really. You're not going to say you care about the immigration fraud happening in your own community. So anyway, love to hear your comments on this. I'm just disgusted by it. You have to read the article. I'll link to that too. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video.